Hey everybody, back with another episode. I guess is the best way to call it. And this is going to be on my third car that I've owned, my 90 or 91 Olds Cutlass Ciera S. I did a double episode kind of with my first one for the simple fact is that it was the same car, just a different badge on it. You know, so I went from going from there. This is just a completely different car, so it gets a completely different episode. And like I said, it was a Ciera Olds Cutlass Ciera S. It wasn't the Cutlass Supreme or the Cutlass Cialis. It was, its own kind of thing. And I wasn't a big fan of it, and I'll go into that in a little bit later. But it came in a various of body styles. So it came in, I think, a coupe, and they had a wagon, and then they had a sedan. I had a sedan, and I had a bunch of different engines in it. They had the Iron Duke, the four-cylinder engine from GM, but luckily I didn't have that one. I had the 3-liter V6, which was still gutless, and it could be attached to either a 3-speed automatic force or a 4-speed automatic. Mine, I believe, had a 3. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was burgundy, and it's an old man's car, so it's an old man's color, and it had burgundy on the inside, and then on top of that, it had the shifter was on the gear stick was on mounted on the steering column, like a lot of old school cars were, and it had the horizontal speedometer, and not very much in the way of interior amenities. I mean, it had a radio. I think it had maybe 4 speakers, two in the front in the doors, and two in the rear above where the trunk was. And then, yeah, I mean, it had seating for 6 people. I mean, it had the big had the big bench in the front, but it had the center armrest could fold up and fold down, and and then in the back it could seat 3 people very comfortably. Had a big trunk, which was good. I mean, as a college kid, you want to be able to move stuff around since you don't really live in any particular place for an extended period of time. So I could haul all of my stuff around, which was kind of cool. But I mean, it was not a cool car at any shape of the imagination. It was a boat, for lack of a better term. It was a floaty suspension, and it handled like, a 1980s, 1970s GM car. It rolled over in the corners. It hit a bump. It just kind of felt like you were on a waterbed. But, that's how people liked cars back then for some reason. But hey, it is what it is. Um, Now, going into the particulars of it, I I didn't really like this car either. I kind of used it as the previous two that I had from before. It was a microwave. It did a job, and that was it. Thankfully, the heat worked very well. I never actually used the AC in the car, so I couldn't tell you if it worked or not. But I mean, living in Massachusetts, and for the few months of summer that we actually did get, I'm not going to use the damn AC for the simple fact is that I don't like being cold and I prefer to be hot. So during the summer, rolling down the windows was a preferred method. But the cool thing about this, as an upgrade to the previous cars that I had from before, it did have electric windows. All 4 worked. It did have electric door locking, which also did work. And it had 4-wheel ABS, so I had 4-wheel disc brakes all the way around, which was an upgrade from my previous car that had discs in front and drums out back. So that was, progress, I guess. And then, like I said, it had the V6. So that was also a bit of progress. I mean, it did have more torque and a little bit more horsepower than the little 2-cylinder and the little 2-liter 4-cylinder I had before in the other car. But, you know, I felt I was going in the right direction. I mean, even if the direction was, you know, from a pile of horse shit to a pile of dog shit, it, it was less amounts of shit that I was dealing with. So, positives. We were thinking positive at this time. Um, And then from there, I didn't even bother look into any type of modifications or anything like that because I mean it's an Oldsmobile. I'm not gonna bother. It's not any special car or nothing like that. It's not a 442 or Cutlass Supreme or anything like that. It's the grandpa car, so it did grandpa stuff basically. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm not even gonna bother looking into it. So from there, just basically going into the background of how I found the car, at another gas station. This is again, buying a car on the internet wasn't exactly the big thing to do at the time. So referred from a friend, got it, picked it up, bought it. I think for like $1,200, $1,300 again. I think it had under 80,000 miles on it or something like that. Some old lady or old man owned it, and it was in relatively good condition. So I picked it up, bought it, drove it around, and then about within a week or two of me owning it, I'm driving it and I'm smelling brakes, and I stopped the car and I'm walking around sniffing, as you do when you're sitting around and you're trying to figure out what the hell's going wrong with your car. You use all of your senses. You hear stuff and you smell, and then eventually you look so you can find out. And then it turned out one of the brake discs was locking up. So, took it back to the guy I bought it from. Thankfully, he was a family friend. And yeah, he was like, all right, I'll take care of it. And he did. Good on him. And we went from there. And then I don't ever remember really having any other problems with that car. It kind of it was just gas, oil, and go. I mean, I don't even remember really doing anything heavy to the vehicle that required a lot of maintenance, honestly. It ran like a champ. That's all I can really say about it. I mean, it did its job. Like I said, there's a microwave. You just turn it on, you go where you got to go, and you turn it off. But, I mean, it got me back and forth from Boston to Jersey more times than I could count. Um, and then also, a couple of road trips here and there. And it never let me down, man. So I don't have anything negative to say about the reliability. But as far as something to enjoy while driving it, it's nothing. The suspension was classic 70s, 80s GM. It rode like a waterbed. I mean, it was big and unwieldy. The steering was like it was set in Play-Doh. There's a lot of steering wheel play. It had no feeling or feedback. It was absolute shit in the snow. That was more probably because I didn't have snow tires or anything like that. But it didn't accelerate good. It didn't stop good, and it turned even worse. So it was nothing. It would just point it down the road and take your time to get to where you need to get to. That's the kind of car it was. I mean, it got to a point even that where I lived in college, I actually moved out of Boston and I moved up to a place called Lowell, Massachusetts. I don't know if anybody knows, where it is. Shout out to everybody who is from there or is still there and is from there and moved away. What's up, y'all? But besides that, it got to a point that I would rather walk, man. It was that bad. Like, unless I needed to carry something or I was going somewhere far away, I would leave the car in the parking lot and I would walk to where I needed to go. Whether I needed to go to the barber shop, pick up some food, or, or just going to hang out at somebody's house or anything like that, man. It was just like, how far is it? I don't have to drive. I'm not driving. Damn that. No, I'm good. But in the interest of progress, the car did have some decent features. Stuff nowadays you wouldn't even think twice about. But back then, from going to what I used to have to what I had at that time, it was going in the right direction. So I got central locking. I still needed the key to get in the car. Um, but when I was inside the car, I could hit a button, and electricity did magic, and the doors locked, which was cool. And then also, I had electric windows, all four of which worked, which was nice. I had 4 working speakers inside of the car, which was also nice. The radio was still shit, but you know, it's a car from the early 90s. The radio's not going to be all that great anyway. So, yeah. From there, it was a tool I used to get back and forth to school because I lived off campus. But eventually it got to the point where I would rather take the train, and that's what I started doing. Because if you know, parking in Boston is a mess. If you don't observe certain sides of the street, if you don't park in a certain way in a certain hour, you come back and your car is gone. It happened to me twice. They towed my car, and I was beyond pissed. But that's what happens when you don't read street signs. And then even if you do read the street signs, sometimes they're completely fucking unfathomable, and you're like, oh my god. But that's just something I had to deal with. So I got to a point where it was either buy a parking pass or buy a train pass. And the train pass was cheaper than the parking pass, so I just took the train to school. I was like, forget it. I'm not driving down there. I don't need to drive down there unless, I was going to a friend's house to party or something like that. Then I get in the car and I drive down. But beyond that, man, forget it. I didn't like the car very much, and I did as much as possible not to get behind the wheel of that car. Like a perfect example of how much I hated it would be this is one of the things that when I was leaving school, and you're going north, I think it's and you're leaving Boston, I think it's 93 that you're going north, and I'm doing about like 70, 75 miles an hour. I don't know what the speed limit is now, or the speed limit was back then. I don't remember exactly, but I was going, well, let's say 75, right? What I do remember is there's a section of 93 that if you're all the way over to the slow lane, which I was, because I'm driving a heap of junk. I'm not. It's not fast. It doesn't handle well, so I'm taking my time. I'm putting along compared to other guys who are just flying by me. And I don't know where it is or if they fixed it. Anybody from Boston area can let me know. But there is this dip that it caught me out, man. And as this car has such slow reacting suspension, I remember going down into this dip and feeling the car go down, and I was like, oh shit. And then the dip kind of spit me up, and I shit you not, I thought all 4 wheels left the ground, man, because I came down hard. I was like, oh my fucking god, these people got to be looking at me like I'm out of my mind. And it was that day forward that I was just like, oh my god, I hate this thing. But it got me home, even though sparks were flying after I landed. But yeah, that was kind of the first thing that I was just like, dude, this car ain't for me. So from there, I just kind of backed off on it, and I never really wanted to deal with it unless I absolutely strictly had to. But when I did need it, as in when I needed to carry stuff around, or I needed to, I was the bus for a bunch of people when we were going to the club or something like that, served its purpose, right? But, like I said, man, I wasn't a fan of it at all. The only thing that I kind of did do to it that I liked was, as the ownership of the car dragged on, the speakers started going out. And I was like, man, I got to do something about this. So, I was working a little job at the time, and I was like, all right, let me put some money to the side. And eventually, I had up enough money, and I got myself a little radio. I think it was at like Best Buy or Circuit City, or one of those like electronic stores. I forgot one. It might have been Best Buy. And I got the radio put in the car, and then I got the speakers for the front, I got the speakers for the back, and I got myself a little 10-inch sub in the trunk. And that, just having that little bit of enjoyment that I got out of it made me drive it a little bit more, because, I'm in this moving bucket of wallpaper paste that is a car and it's that damn boring, this made it a little bit more enjoyable. I had my music, so I was like, okay, I can somewhat deal with this, but it's still not something I enjoyed being in after that. I don't really have any like really memorable stories with the car, honestly. It's just I didn't really drive it very much. It got me home. It got me back to school area, and it got me to the train station when it was cold. And then I took the train in and out of Boston for while I was finishing up school. And yeah, beyond that, man, I was just like, oh, this thing is just forget it. And I honestly can say that I let that car go without even a second thought. When I graduated college and I got myself back home, and I got a job without even a thought. I donated it, I think, to some charity or something like that. I was like, I need to get rid of this damn thing. It is just ugh. You know what I mean? It just put me off. And after driving three miserable cars during my college years, that day forward, I was like, I will never ever drive a car that I don't like. It was a promise I made to myself, and thankfully I've been able to keep it. But that day, when I got rid of that car, I was like, I will never, ever, ever buy another microwave on wheels. Ever. It needs to be something I can get in, and I want to push the ignition, or I want to turn the key. I want to put it in gear, and I want to drive it. And every time I get in it, it'll put a smile on my face. That is what I need from a car. If I don't get that from your car, whatever company makes the car, I don't buy it. So I don't care what kind of gadgets it has. I don't care what kind of instrument cluster it has. I don't care, that it has a, a solar sunroof, or it has the newest hybrid engine, or it has, you know, a Wi-Fi capability, or any of that crap. I don't care about that. If I do not enjoy being behind the wheel of that car, I'm going to drive it into a pole so I can collect the insurance money and get something else. That is how much I hate boring cars. And that kind of steered me into the direction that I have now as a, almost 40-year-old man, that I can actually afford cars and all that kind of stuff. That shaped me, or scarred me for the rest of my life. And that is how I look at things now when it comes to buying a car, or especially when it's something that you spend so much of your life in. It's like the three places you spend most of your life in, if you think about it, is your home, your job or your career or wherever it is like that, and your car. And it doesn't take a lot to make me happy living in whatever situation that I'm living. As long as I'm comfortable, like I got my internet, I got my PC that I can play my video games on and watch my streaming services, and I got a nice bed to sleep in, I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter. As long as I have those things, I can make myself comfortable, and I can make myself happy with that. And as far as work goes, I don't care either. At the end of the day, I go in, I do what I need to do, and I come home. It's a means to an end. I go to work so I can live my life. I work to live. I don't live to work. That's how I look at my life, right? So I go to work because I need money to do things that I want to do. So that's just something you just have to accept, that I have to accept, and move on. But the two things that I have full control over, well, the one thing I have full control over is my commute and how much I enjoy my commute. right? So you can go to work and you say, "I hate this damn job," da 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 da, whatever it is like that. But every 2 weeks or every week or whatever, you look at your paycheck and you're like, you know what? I'll take it. I'll suffer from whatever I need to suffer to see this check. I'm good. I can justify that means. But what I'm not going to do, especially, is pay somebody for me to be miserable, right? So I'm going to give a bank or I'm going to give a person or whatever it is like that my money to get something that I don't want. No, I'm good. And if you ask me my opinion, and this is just me, it's not everybody else, and I can understand that, would I rather buy a brand new car that I don't like or buy a used car that needs a little bit of work that I will love? I'll take the used car that I love. That's just how I look at it. But enough of my ranting. This has just been covering my old Cultlass Ciera. Like I said, man, the first three were rough. I was not a fan of any of them, and I hope they're in a junkyard somewhere rotting, as far as I'm concerned, because, oh my lord, they were just awful. But, got the fun stuff coming up next. The next one I got is my first car out of school, which was Acura RSX. It was a base model. I know I'm going to get all types of shit for it, but I made the best of it with what I had. You know what I mean? So I'll go into a lot more detail with that one next. And yeah, thanks for listening. And leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that fun shit. Holla at me later.